Hello all of you out there, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 most elite Ark dinos. And first up on the list we have the Caro, and this creature really does just feel premium and elite to me whenever I use it, albeit it isn't the most powerful creature out there, and loads of people prefer the Aloe over this thing. But I'm not really one for the Aloe hype. I don't know why. It is a great creature with a wealth of abilities, and it is a much more powerful creature than the Caro, but I just don't like using it at all, and I have no idea why really. But when I use the Caro, I absolutely love this thing for so many reasons. Namely, its size. This thing is the perfect size for me. It always is the right size for what I need it. Yes, it's not going to be the perfect size for caves, but you always have the baryonyx for that, and a small carnivore kind of makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, as I feel like I can sneak around the place more easily. But I'm not a PvP player, so that isn't really essential to me. And also I do like the speed and the stamina that the Caro has too, which some other carnos lack. Other carnivores lack, not other carnos. Well, it depends on the level really. But the Aloe again does have great stamina too, and maybe faster than the Aloe. I don't know why I love the Caro so much. Well, I do know why, but I don't really know why I don't like the Aloe at all. But either way, this thing also does have a really great bleed ability, which works in its favour, and it deals a heck of a lot of damage. It is really worth to get Caro someday, but if you're more of an Aloe person, then go with the Aloe, I guess, but I can never really like that creature, and I don't really know why. Next up, we got the Theory, and this creature has to be included on the list. Like, the Tuff Chicken is one of the most essential harvesting dinos in the game. It just has to be here. It is a great gatherer of fiber, wood, thatch, berries, all of that it is great at, and it is also really great at harvesting meat as well, as it is one of the few herbivores which can actually harvest meat, which kind of doesn't really make sense as it's a herbivore, but you know, we'll just go along with it. Its claws are really ones to be scared about, which isn't really in reference to what I was saying. I don't really know what my trail of thought was there. Either way, its claws are obviously where all of its damage is going to come from, and its saddle is unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
And you know, that Michael Rosen joke is just perfect, and I always have to sneak it in whenever I get the chance with the Theory top 10s. And yeah, the Theory also has another great use on the island. This thing is an extremely useful creature for the dragon boss fight. One which seems like on the surface, why don't you go for a Rex? But when you dive and you analyze that boss fight, you realize it's got a pretty nasty ability that really affects carnivores, but herbivores not so much. Next up, we have the Snowowl, and this creature just has to be on the list. It has so many great uses that I can't discount it, and it definitely has that very premium feel, and it feels like you're being treated right and on top of the world really. Albeit this isn't the most powerful creature out there, but I don't really get that premium feel out of the most powerful creatures. As with creatures like the Giga, their stamina is abysmal, and I kind of feel like I've been scammed a little bit. The Giga is still a great creature, I'm not saying that's rubbish, I just don't really get any kind of premium feel from it. Whereas the Snowowl, this creature is just absolutely great when it comes to controlling this thing, which is, in my opinion, an essential part of a creature. If its controls are just awful and feel awful, you're not really going to like using that creature, but it's just so satisfying to glide around and use all of its abilities. For example, that heat-seeking ability. Not too useful for PvE players, unless you're obviously searching for a small tame or a creature which has gone missing of sorts. But on the PvP scenarios, this is a lot more useful, as you can track down some players if they try to raid your base, or if you think they are trying to raid your base. Also, you want to level up loads of stamina on these things, as they heal really quickly, obviously when they have enough stamina, because that's an ability where they have, which you've seen there, they will essentially just freeze all the creatures around them in a radius, and then boom, like that, they heal up, which is actually slightly better than the Daedon's healing ability in some cases. unless there's just loads of enemy creatures around in your near proximity, as you're also going to be healing up those. But if you're healing up a wild creature, which you're trying to tame, as you've just chucked loads of Trancaros into it, and it's about to die, that's a really, really useful PvE scenario for it. Now, I talked about the Barry earlier, and the Barry just has to be on this list. This is probably the best caving creature, next to the Shadowman in my opinion. That is another great caving creature, but I still always go back to the Barry, probably mainly for nostalgia reasons, as you could say so many things which are better about the Shadowman than the Baryonyx, especially when it comes to mobility. But still, the Baryonyx is a very mobile creature, and for its day, when it came out, this was like it was just the best at caving. And sadly, it's been overtaken by creatures like the Shadowman, but I still use this thing for some reason, because nostalgia's a big thing in my Ark playing. I know I'm not the most efficient player. Some people will get angry at me for that, but I just love the nostalgia around this creature. But it is still definitely a very, very useful one to this day, which many people use, again, for that caving. But why is it so good for caving? Mainly, obviously, because its size, and the fact that for its size, it deals a really nice amount of damage and has a good enough health stat to keep up with it, as you don't need the biggest health pool for cave runs, as you're probably not going to be in there for that long. And if you press right click too, these things will do a spin attack, which can stun creatures up to the size of the Megalodon. And it is a good shout if you want to do some underwater caves too, due to that ability obviously. Speaking of the Shadowman, we do have the Shadowman next, and I have to put this thing higher than the Barry. Like, I love the Barry so much, but for everything else apart from caving, the Shadowman just has such a premium and elite feel to it. If the Xboxes were to sell the 360 elites again, the Shadowman would definitely be the chosen creature over something like the Baryonyx. Again, its mobility and its controls, they just feel so smooth. Like, just look how high this thing can jump. It's absolutely insane. These things can travel immense distances, and for land creatures, it's insane. And if this came out on Ark the Island in 2015, people would have been so shocked. But you know, Gen 2 is a really OP map, and it isn't just great in the skies as well, it feels amazing in the water too. Don't take that out of context. I plead you not to take that sentence out of context. But their only real downside is obviously the fact that the taming method is absolutely awful, or at least it is to me, but you know, a lot of people agree with that statement. Right, next up we have the Reaper. Obviously the Reaper Queen, no, the Reaper King, not the Reaper Queen. What am I talking about? You can't tame Reaper Queens, you can tame Reaper Kings. But for some reason, I made this bureau with a Reaper Queen. Don't ask why. If you spotted that, well done. You can effectively identify a Reaper Queen apart from a Reaper King. But either way, the point still stands. It is still a Reaper of sorts. Obviously, no Reaper Queen tames. That doesn't exist. Reaper King tames. In terms of their taming method though, it is definitely one which somehow feels premium, even though it is one of the most annoying taming methods in the game probably, and there's so many steps to it. But once you do it, and while you're doing it, you just feel like you're on top of the world, as long as it's going well. If it's going awful, then the premium experience is not there. But once tamed, you really do feel all of the effort that you put in. This creature is so powerful, and it just tears through everything on Arboration, and nothing really can compare to it. And if you want to add a little other Arboration creature as an honorable mention, it's not little, the Karkanos is a pretty elite feeling creature as well, but sadly, obviously, it has not made this list. Now we have the Mwing, and when it comes to travelling, this creature simply has to be put here. Its controls feel so good, and my main claim to fame with this creature is the fact that I have done the Alpha Mwing race mission with this thing, which a beginner Mwynger, if that's the correct verb, Mwynger, it's a verb now, Mwynger, it's not, it wouldn't be a verb, what am I talking about? Either way, a beginner Mwynger wouldn't be able to do it on Alpha, probably on Gamma though. That is quite an easy mission to do on Gamma. But in terms of obviously their premium feel, these things feel even more premium due to the level you actually get these things at. And on Gen 2 you can get these things as early as level 19 and use them as early as level 19 because that's when the saddle's unlocked. Obviously you can tame one before then, but you unlock the saddle for this thing before you even unlock Trancaros, and that's insane because every single time I've tamed this thing, I've used Trancaros, apart from one which I did with the club, so technically that's a lie. Also, they do have a very premium feel when it comes to the milk which they produce, being a portable feeding trough, and it just gets a lot of the hassle away from breeding, and they can gather berries too. It really feels like this creature is just packed with every ability which you could really want out of it. In at number 3 is the RG, and the RG just has to be put in that top 3, as the RG is that creature which I always look to when I go for metal runs, and the premiumness, if that's even a word, over the Pteranodon is insane. In fact, that even sometimes in my gameplay, I won't even go for a Pteranodon, I'll just go straight for this creature if I feel up to taming it, as I usually don't trap these things, as I'm a bit stupid when it comes to taming RGs, so I usually give myself a really horrible time with these creatures, which is sometimes why I struggle to tame these things. It's really stupid. I should just make a trap. They're not that difficult to tame. They really aren't. I wouldn't say they're difficult at all. Just, I like to play Ark the difficult way. Does anyone else do that with RGs as well, or is that just me? Also, in terms of the creatures which they can pick up as well, they can pick up a Wealth, and the Doedicurus and Anki are going to be great pairings with this thing, as they are great gatherers of resources, and it is really the creature which is going to transport you from areas of when you're gathering resources, as it has weight reduction on things like metal, crystal, obsidian, those resources which are obviously, don't know why I can say obviously there, very essential to any Ark player's life in terms of, you know, actually completing the game. They're very useful resources. Also, its saddle actually has a portable smithy, which not many other creatures have, and it has a nice little neat regen ability on top of all of that too. So why don't you just tame the RG? Just tame this thing. In at number 2, we have the Desmodus. And is there any creature which really treats you better than the creature which is in at number 1 on this list? Obviously, this is in at number 2. Well, not really, and that is obviously why it is in at number 2. This creature feels so elite in its form, like nothing really gets better than Desmodus, apart from thing number 1. But in terms of its uses, that Sanguine Elixir is an absolute game changer for doing any kind of taming, as a third of it's done for you, and for official Ark players out there, that is an absolute godsend, and I'm sure you'll be taming these things as quickly as you possibly can. And someone said recently, well, this thing really isn't a great creature because it can't pick up stuff, and I don't really use that out of a flyer, surprisingly, and I prefer all the other abilities this thing has, like gliding, being able to go invisible, not on the Extinction Wastelands as it's never night, don't know why I chose this map, and also just the fact of how cool this creature is to ride around. I don't need that ability, and it doesn't need it at all. And in at number 1 is the Deinonychus, and I just have to put this thing in at the number 1 spot, as its controls feel great, and all of its abilities, which I'll get to in a second, are so good, not even any other Ark creature can actually have the claim to fame ability which this creature wields. Obviously, why it is just such a useful creature. Its first ability, obviously being that it can, obviously, what am I saying? The first ability, sorry, the fact that it can grapple onto creatures and just absolutely tear them to shreds. And that is something which you can't see on any other Ark creature. It has that, and it has even more abilities too. Obviously, it's going to have that pack buff, and the bleed ability that you saw there is going to deal bleed damage, which is great for any carnivore to have. I was going to say essential there. It's not, as not all carnivores have the bleed ability. Doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but it is very nice, and its main claim to fame is it can deal that on bosses too, which no other Ark creature, as far as my knowledge goes, can do. Comment me down below if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's no other creature. Either way, this is one of the best boss creatures out there, and you have to try it, especially with that pack buff. They are great in packs, and with that bleed, man, these creatures are insane. And they're also really good at parkour as well, and their controls feel really nice when you get them right. And I'm not the best Deinonychus parkourer, if that's even the right word for it, as I'm a bit rusty. I haven't really practiced with these things a lot in recent times, but definitely tame yourself a Deinonychus. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this one, as I really did enjoy making it. And as always, comment down below the most elite Ark creature down below, and I'll see you all later.